Only through eternity are you closest to the heavenly principles.
Today we will be discussing the Electro Archon, the God of Eternity, God of Thunder, the Eternal Excellence, the Narukami Ojosho, or Baal, the Almighty Omnipresent Immortal Raiden Shogun. Or more elegantly, today we will be discussing how strong is the Raiden Shogun. So I'm going to start by going over what we see her do during the story's events, and then after going into the more lore-heavy info. When we first meet the Shogun, she is about to take Toma's vision, but the Traveler steps in and stops her. The Shogun grabs her sword and says a very cool line.
You will be inlaid upon this statue.
I don't know why, I just really like that line. Anyways, the Traveler is transported into the plane of Euthymia, where a battle between the Traveler and A takes place, and she pretty easily beats them. This battle also shows how fast Raiden is, as the Traveler is just zooming around all over the place and about to attack, and she reacts at relatively normal speed, moves ever so slightly, and knocks the Traveler out like that. Now, the Traveler ain't no slouch. They've defeated two Harbingers, the strongest of the Fatui, who are the strongest military in all of Tibet, assisted Zhongli in defeating Ajdaha, fought and had their powers acknowledged by Andrius, so a pretty strong dude or dudette. Well, anyways, A destroys them, and they're actually gonna die right here, if not for Toma. So the story happens, events transpire, twists and turns. You've played it, I'm assuming. Would be weird if you didn't and you're watching this video. Signora shows up, the Traveler beats her, and the Shogun easily executes Signora and incinerates her body. Damn. We end up in the plane of Euthymia again, and a rematch ensues. The Traveler is losing until Yaimiko reminds the Traveler of the visions attached to the statue in Inazuma. The Traveler siphons power from these visions, and with the massive boost in power is able to ultimately defeat the Raiden Shogun. So again, it took an at least centuries-old interdimensional Traveler, with a power-up from the belief and ambitions of multiple visions to beat her. These beliefs and ambitions being able to surpass the gods' expectations, whatever that may entail. I'm not sure if it was just me, but I was kind of curious on how strong the Shogun is, like the puppet. Like, most people seem to assume that it's just weaker than A, but is it actually weaker than A as most people would assume? The answer I came up with was no, probably not. Let me explain. So in A's story, it talks about creating a copy of an Archon as rather difficult. Also saying the puppet would perfectly imitate everything about A flawless puppet, and calling her the new Raiden Shogun. More implications that the puppet might have an archonic amount of power comes from Scaramouche. When he was created and discarded, A had to seal away his power. As well as that, the Pale Flame Goblet calls him a transcendent being divinely created. So the Shogun is meant to be a perfect copy of A, was created with the same technique as Scaramouche, who had to have his transcendent power sealed, meaning the Shogun most likely has a similar amount of power as A. The puppet is probably not as strong as A herself, maybe in terms of raw power, but not perfectly equal in all regards, because the Shogun is its own person. She may be very cold and almost emotionless, but she's not just a robot. She is her own being, she can speak for herself, she can forget things, A even refers to her as a different person, and I don't think it's ever stated that A's memories were implanted into her. Furthermore, in the Ascension voice lines for the Raiden Shogun, it kind of implies that the Shogun needed to learn the art of swordsmanship and the foundations of polearms from scratch. Basically what I'm saying is, the Shogun is not as experienced in combat and their abilities as A, but that's only if A's memories weren't implanted, which I don't think happened, but I could be proven wrong, and the Shogun could easily be recalling A's memories. In any case, the Shogun and A should have a similar amount of power. Exactly how powerful are they? Well, that's what you're here for, isn't it? Firstly, she casually closes Inazuma off from the rest of the world with a perpetual storm. Controlling and creating storms seems to be something that can be easily done by them, as apparently the Shogun can...
I command the thunder in all corners of the world to cease. Rest well tonight.
Meaning that the Shogun can very easily, with almost no effort, stop all the storms in the world. Which is very impressive, but also kind of stupid. Cause how is a storm on the other side of the world gonna affect my sleep? Like, come on. Moving on to a quick history lesson, during the Archon War there were two twin gods, Baal and Beelzebul. They were victorious over the Archon War. Beelzebul, despite being the better fighter of the two, believed she was nothing more than a warrior. Let her sister become the official Electro Archon, gaining a Gnosis, while Beelzebul became her body double, mostly being in charge of combative affairs. This implies that even after gaining the power of a Gnosis, A was still the stronger of the two. Now, Baal was said to not be much of a fighter, but having her Gnosis would still give her a significant amount of power. We know this due to Zhongli, someone who absolutely and utterly dominated the Archon War. After relinquishing his Gnosis, in his Ascension voice lines he gradually gains back his strength until his final Ascension voice line, where he seems surprised that he has gained back the power his Gnosis granted. And a surprising amount of power to this motherfucker is a significant amount of power. Meaning either Ball wasn't all that strong, which is possible, but she did fight in the Archon War, and she is described as being no great fighter. The wording implies she could fight, so it's either that Ball was relatively weak, or A was such a great fighter that she could bridge the gap in power with skill alone. I think either is likely, or maybe a combination of both. A was described as divinely skilled in martial arts and unsurpassed with the blade, and this is probably a given with the fact that this is an Archon we're talking about, but A states that she is the
most supreme and terrifying incarnation of lightning in the whole of Tevat.
Even more impressive is the fact that she is just naturally this powerful because she has never used a Gnosis. Venti, who states he is the weakest Archon, was on par with Decarabian, someone who went to war with Andreas. Andreas, even in his current weakened spirit state, is still able to freeze over all of Mondstadt in an instant. After gaining his Archonic power, Venti was easily able to change the entire landscape of Mondstadt by blowing away all the mountains. At least one of these mountains actually flew all the way to the Golden Apple Archipelago, so Venti literally blew a mountain so far away it doesn't show up on the map anymore, and he is considered the weakest Archon. So imagine what A can do, even if she's only slightly stronger, which I doubt. She seems to be a very high tier god. She dominated during the Archon War and united Inazuma under her rule because of how impressive and scared people were of her. A notable instance of her power is when the Great Serpent Orobashi invaded and attacked the Raiden Shogun, starting a war. The war was brutal and took many casualties. The Great Serpent was eventually slain by A, ending the war. Orobashi was killed by A using the Misuno no Hitotachi, which according to A herself is a
sword art without parallel in all the world.
Using this technique, she was able to easily defeat Orobashi, splitting his body and the island he was on in two. The slash in the island still having residual electro energy from this strike resonating from it, even after possibly 2,000 years. Plus, it's said a few times that Orobashi legit had no chance against the Raiden Shogun, so this might not have even been that difficult for her to do. In all honesty, it's kinda difficult to determine how strong characters of this caliber are, like Venti or Zhongli, and obviously the Raiden Shogun. These guys are always holding back, because if they didn't, major landmarks would just be deleted very easily. Mondstadt, gone. Liyue, dust. Inazuma, erased. Hotel. So everything I just talked about is how strong the Raiden Shogun can be summed up with the info that is shown to us, which might not even be the full capability of A, because like I said, they're always holding back. So for the rest of the video, I will be kinda highballing A to try and discover how powerful she possibly is at her max. This portion will be a bit more speculative, but I will try to back up my speculations as much as possible. I'll also bring up counter arguments against myself, just to make it fair. So, the plane of Euthymia is an interesting topic. The plane seems to be some sort of pocket dimension created by A. It's her own personal inner world, even affected by her emotions. Actually kind of similar to the inner world in Bleach. This seems very impressive, like creating this, but the problem is, one, we don't know how big the plane is, and two, she could have just made it in a way similar to how we made the Teapot, which, required materials and technique that could be taught and not actual power. Actually, Yai said she taught A how to place her consciousness into objects, so again, it might have just been a technique and not power. We just don't know enough details to know how impressive this could be, but I still think it is worth a mention. So we can talk about Yai Miko's statement about the vision's ambitions transcending space and time, which could be interpreted as an instance of poetic hyperbole. But for fun, if this line is meant to be taken literally, and it took the power that transcends time and space to beat her, then that would put Raiden on a level above the plane of existence of the universe, basically. This would be a massive leap to what we are used to, but there are some things that might support this, like the fact that gods are immortal, their bodies may die, but their mind and spirit can't. And in Zhongli's second quest, Agedaha implies that Zhongli will live forever until the end of time and possibly even beyond it. So there is a possibility that A and at least the Archons are above time and space. The issues I have with this are that, now I don't 100% know how this works, so I could be wrong, but if she transcends time, Why does A strive for eternity, the concept of infinite time? Although thinking about it, eternity isn't really infinite time to her, it's unchanging time where like things never progress or erode and she can defend Inazuma forever and the lightning can shine and all that stuff. So that might work, but another problem with this is just consistency. Again, it's a huge leap to what we're used to. Consistently, it is impressive being able to move mountains and easily destroy nations. So going from that to being above the universal plane is a bit jarring. I don't believe she's this powerful, but there is a small possibility, I suppose. The future may change things, but right now, this is just speculation. Moving on, if we look at A's elemental skill description, it states that she can manipulate stars, which I originally thought made sense. I mean, Archons are meant to be the top tiers of this universe, so being able to manipulate and possibly destroy stars, I can get behind it. But then, these three exist. Ningguang, Keqing, and Albedo. Ningguang and Keqing both have elemental bursts that say that they can destroy stars, and Albedo has an elemental skill that can apparently become the sun. Also, if you're asking why isn't this shown in game, or why aren't they this powerful in game, just think about it. Like, Kratos from God of War can easily destroy the planet, but still struggles to open a chest or lift a kinda big rock. It's just the mechanics and a way to make the game interactive and fun. Well, I mean, you don't really have fun playing this game anyway, so Anyways, these three. Well, Albedo is a bit strange, he's kind of an outlier, so we'll just get rid of him. These two have shown to be quite impressive vision users, Ningguang more so, but the thing is, there are beings that are stronger than even high-level vision users, like Adepti, Gods, and finally, Archons, meaning that everyone around and above these two is capable of destroying stars. Which I find a bit strange because A's elemental skill seems to hype this up, saying, beings of great divinity might affect all that they survey. But I suppose you can say that Keqing and Ningguang have to use their elemental burst and accumulation of energy to release for massive power, so it may be difficult for them to destroy stars, while the Raiden Shogun can just use her elemental skill, which she can basically spam, making manipulating stars easy for her, showing the difference in the power between them. Also, these descriptions might be pretty credible sources, because this description isn't from a book or a character statement, like how books may differ from actual events. Like when Xiao calls a book written about him fanfic, or how the weapon, the Vortex Vanquisher, has multiple legends associated with it, and even characters that are very knowledgeable can be wrong, so you can argue these descriptions, and character stories too, are more objective. I honestly do think this has some validity to it. It's actually kind of consistent, so Raiden possibly able to destroy stars. This last point on how strong she possibly is a narrative one. This one involves eternity and its reoccurring connection to the heavenly principles. As we know, the heavenly principles are connected to Celestia. Celestia, as far as we know, being the most elevated among the hierarchy of the universe. It is said a few times that eternity is closest to the heavens, more so than the other ideals of the Archons. Which does make sense. Out of all 7 ideals that the Archons are gods of, eternity does seem closest to the concept of heaven. So in turn, A's strive for eternity could possibly put her closest in power to Celestia. Because it's a running theme with A that only through eternity are you closest to the heavenly principles. So yeah, that was about it. Thank you for making it this far. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe and all. It really helps me out, believe me. Anyhow, that was how strong is the Raiden Shogun. Did you enjoy that? And actually, what are your thoughts on A? I actually thought about making a video like discussing A as a character, because I think there are some interesting things to talk about. I don't know if you want a video like that, let me know in the comments though. Anyways, again, that was how strong is the Raiden Shogun. Were you shocked by how powerful she is? Okay, I'll be going. I'll leave. Thank you. Stay safe. I'm sorry. Keep eating noodles. Bye bye.